Hey guys, this video is sponsored by Helix Sleep. Premium mattresses, custom fit to your needs, shipped right to your door. I really love my Helix mattress. It's super comfortable and it's fit exactly to my needs, especially because of Helix's sleep quiz, where you can take it, find out what type of sleeper you are. If you're like me and you toss and turn through that the entire night and you're super hot the whole time, then Helix might be exactly what you're looking for, because you never know what you're gonna get with some mattresses. And when I first took the sleep quiz, I got matched to the semi-firm Luxe mattress, which blows itself up out of the box. Super convenient to set up, and guys, it's comfortable. Laying on that thing is so nice. When I sleep, I tend to lay on my side, and this mattress is perfect for that. I feel like it holds me gently, but not too gently, for I would sink into the floor. And man, does Helix have variety. Helix has 20 unique different mattresses. I was honestly really surprised with how convenient it was to set up and how comfortable it really is. Oh. Not getting me anything. And if it makes you nervous to buy something that you haven't tried before, don't worry, Helix has you covered. They have a 100-night sleep trial, so you get more than 3 months to make sure that you really love it. Plus, Helix mattresses have a 10-year warranty, and they even offer financing options and flexible payment plans. So a great night's sleep is not too far away. So go take the sleep quiz, see what matches to your preferences, and it might just be the most comfortable mattress you've ever had. I've had my Helix mattress for over a year now, and I have to say, without a doubt, it's the best mattress I have ever had. I love my Helix, and I think you would too. If you're looking for a new bed, check out Helix Sleep. You can click the link below, or you can head to helixsleep.com/XP to level 3 to get 20% off your mattress. That's helixsleep.com/XP to level 3 for 20% off. All right. Video time. Hey guys, I decided to record outside today because the sky is really pretty. So I've been running Descent into Avernus for about a year now. I've always really wanted to run that pre-written but completely change the beginning, because I think if the beginning was a little bit different, it would be my absolute favorite. And I've finally been able to do that. So thank you to everybody who watches Arcane Arcade, and also all of my players who are willing to be like, yeah, Jacob, cook. I've talked about it a bunch, but I really love that pre-written. I think some of the characters and the storytelling that they do in that pre-written is unlike anything they've done in any other book, or anything that I've really ever seen in a TTRPG story. But I really wanted to present a story in a D&D game about regret and war and what you're willing to do for those that you love. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the adventure, basically, let me just give you a quick rundown, the quickest I can do. Basically, you're a group of people who are forcibly drafted into the Flaming Fist of Baldur's Gate, which are like the police militia, and you are told to go stop a cult from killing people in the city, and the Flaming Fist can't do it because they're too busy dealing with refugees from a completely different city. Those refugees come from a city that apparently descended into Avernus. It's called Elturel. So you go kill the cult, and then you find out that this family called the Van Thampers are behind the cult, so you go and you stop them, and then you find out that they had been working with the leader, the high overseer of Elturel, the other city. He fled before it descended, came to Baldur's Gate, and is hiding out. So you find him, and you're like, yeah, you're not a good guy. And you find out that Thavius Krieg, the high overseer of Elturel, has this infernal puzzle box. So you take that puzzle box to a completely different city called Candlekeep that has a bunch of super smart people and scholars and mages, and a tiefling woman named Silvira opens it, and you find out that inside it is a contract that Thavius made to Zariel, who made a deal to send the whole city into Avernus. So then an otter named Traxagor teleports you to Avernus to go save the city. The city of Elturel is being pulled into the river Styx. Everybody's in hell. Everything is awful. There's a bunch of locations to explore and try to find allies so that you can eventually defeat Zariel or find her sword, because Zariel is once a celestial angel who led a bunch of Elturian hell riders into Avernus in order to fight back the demon horde and devil horde, fight the blood war basically, and they all basically died, and she didn't, and she decided to side with Asmodeus because this was what she thought was right. So you can also go find her sword and give it back to her, and she can potentially be redeemed and turn back into an angel, if that's what you call redemption. Spoilers, I don't! And that's also why Zariel took Elturel in the first place, because she basically wants revenge for the bunch of hell riders that abandoned her and she assumes caused her and those who went with her to die when they first rode into hell. That's why they're called the Hell Riders, actually. Did you know that? That's why Zevlor in Baldur's Gate 3 is called that. Anyways, I love that second half of the game. I love being in Avernus. I think they did a really good job with all of the locations and stories that you can encounter there. I obviously really like Zariel. You guys know that. I just want to say I'm not like a Zariel apologist. I think she's wrong, but it's a part of why I like her. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, this video isn't about that. Jacob, shut the up about Zariel. Talk about her so much. Shut up, bro. This video's not about her, I promise. She's just involved. So anyways, I had run it about 2.5 times in the past. So when I eventually knew that I wanted to run this adventure and do it the way that I wanted to do it, I already knew the adventure like the back of my hand. I also knew what kind of themes I wanted to play with, and I knew what I wanted to change. Primarily the beginning, the Baldur's Gate section, and also a little bit about the last couple of sections. I primarily wanted to put some more importance and emphasis on some characters that fade into the background a little bit of the adventure. There are 4 characters in the pre-written module that I absolutely love, and 2 of them I don't really want to spoil yet because we're still playing Descend, which is my version of Descent into Avernus. I called it Descend. Ooh, really creative. So for my audience and also my players who are maybe watching this, I don't want to spoil those 2 yet, but the other 2 I do want to talk about, and it's kind of the whole point of this video. When Zariel first took the Hell Riders from El Terrell into Avernus to fight back the Blood War because Yanagu was just doing a lot of murder, most of the Hell Riders abandoned her. They immediately saw the Blood War and fled. This is why she wants the city in the first place. She wants revenge. She's like, hey, you betrayed me. You deserted. I don't like that. And then everybody else dies, except for 4 characters, 2 who I'm not going to talk about and 2 that I really want to talk about. These 2 characters end up becoming villains in the campaign that the characters get to fight, or like talk to and reason with a little bit. Their names are Haruman and Elanthius. They are 2 of the Hell Riders that make it all the way to the end with Zariel, where she's basically dead, like near dead, and then Asmodeus finds her and is like, hey, nice. You want to join my side? They are also brought into this deal where Zariel becomes a devil. The 2 of them become Narzugons, which are a type of like paladin devil thing. They're very cool. I love them. They have nightmares. They're awesome. Their story in the pre-written is super interesting. Haruman is like the gung-ho one. He's like, yeah, I'm with you to the end, Zariel. I think this is the right decision. I'm following you. I'm doing this. But Elanthius is kind of on the other side of things. He's a bit more regretful of what happened. When Zariel takes Asmodeus' hand, he, and this is written in this book, offs himself. But then Asmodeus / Zariel bring him back to life, and he's like this undead Narzugon kind of thing. He's like forever in servitude, like it's against his will. Oh, it's so cool. So anyways, they're just 2 really interesting characters that play a little bit deeper into this idealism of Zariel willing to do whatever it takes, even become the very opposite of what she is supposed to be, to do what she thinks is right. And the 2 of them also represent that. And it's cool because it's a little side thing that's just thrown in there. It's like, that's their backstory. And you don't really get to learn it, I feel, from the 2 times I've run it. I think you could definitely incorporate it somehow, which is what I did and what I wanted to do. And that's what I'm talking about today. I really wanted to play the long con with these characters. I didn't want them to be the main focus, but I know I wanted them to be involved with the story from the beginning. There's this really cool comic series that I know Max Dunbar worked on, who also did a bunch of the concept art for Descent into Avernus. That kind of gives a canon in-universe story as to what happened during the story, because it kind of fundamentally changed a lot about the Sword Coast, which is why it's also referenced in Baldur's Gate 3. I suppose this is like what actually happened. One of my favorite things was that Haruman is terrorizing the streets of Baldur's Gate, and that was like, ooh, that's a cool idea. I like that. So when we were coming to the end of our Wild Beyond the Witchlight game, I was like, all right, I'm going to run Descent into Avernus, and I'm going to do it the way that I've always wanted to do it. I'm going to talk about the themes and things I've always wanted to talk about in a D&D game or any kind of media. If I had to write a book, it would probably be about this. I want to play up these characters that I really like. I want to talk about some really serious stuff. And man, I want to make Haruman and Elanthius like really cool. Amongst other things that I won't spoil because we haven't finished the game yet. Also, at the time of writing this, which was like early 2023, late 2022, I was also very inspired by my favorite anime and manga, Attack on Titan, or Shingeki no Kyojin, if you know. Around the time I was writing it was when we were catching up and rewatching it, and it was also the time that we were moving into our new house, so which was a really stressful, horrible process, if you guys remember any of that, and we kind of like trauma bonded to it, and it's probably one of my favorite things ever. anyways, we're not here to talk about that. It just played a really heavy part into the type of story that I wanted to tell with this game. So if you see little things that are like, hey, that's like that thing in that one thing, yep, that was intentional. My brain could not help it. I had to do it. I had to bring it together a little bit. Yes, Spencer's character Caius has to take damage in order to turn into his giant gnoll form, okay? I think it's cool. Instead of starting in Baldur's Gate and being forcibly drafted into the Flaming Fist, I really wanted to put the players somewhat in the same mindset as Zariel, Haruman, Elanthius, and those two other characters. I wanted them to be soldiers. I wanted them to be people who were willing to fight and die for their home. Not just because it's their home, but because of the people who are in it. So instead of being forcibly drafted into the Flaming Fist, one of the first things I had my players do is join the Flaming Fist and give me a reason why. Like the bare minimum for your character is they are joining the Flaming Fist and you have to have a reason why. And my idea with this was to also have the Flaming Fist in sort of a morally gray standpoint. Because as it stands, if you play Baldur's Gate 3 or you read the book, the Flaming Fist are not good guys. And that's fine. I think that's great. That's a good place to put them. Baldur's Gate is kind of a, hive of scum and villainy. I wanted to do something a little more morally gray with the Flaming Fist. Mostly because I wanted the players to be a part of them, but I wanted them to sort of be like the good ones. Really put an ACAB to the test. I didn't necessarily want the players to be out the gate good guys. I wanted them to be doing what they were doing kind of for their own survival and for who they care about and their loved ones. Which is how I like to have my adventurers be anyways. I don't like them to be like wholly good or wholly evil starting out the gate, whatever they're doing. Kind of like to put them in a morally neutral ground, and then if they decide to be heroic, then that's awesome and they're cool. And also, instead of starting in Baldur's Gate, we're not forcibly, drafted into the Flaming Fist. Instead, I wanted to start them away from Baldur's Gate, kind of separated from it, and instead they become heroes because they defeat something that threatens their home. So I split the entire game into like 4 acts, and each act is about 15 sessions. So Act 1 would be outside of Baldur's Gate, kind of far away from their home. Act 2 would be in Baldur's Gate, and then Act 3 would be Avernus, and Act 4 would be Avernus Part 2, kind of. I don't want to spoil it. We haven't got there yet. And really, the whole purpose of this entire first act is to sort of put them in the same situation that Zariel, Haruman, Elanthius, and all those other people are in. They want to protect their home, and they're willing to do anything it takes to do that. I had no expectations for my players. I just wanted to put them in that scenario. That's kind of the whole point of the game. If they decide that they are a mirror to those characters, which are, the villains, then fine, that's what they are. But they could also decide that, no, you made the wrong decisions. We did the same thing, but we did it better, and this is why. I also love that. I was down for whatever they wanted to do. Because, first and foremost, this is a D&D game. Yes, I have stories and themes I want to talk about, but I'm not going to be like, okay guys, here's this cool TV show idea that I have. Let's play it out. But I'm very lucky to have very cool players who understand the assignment. So anyways, Act 1, they are in the Valley of Fanged Teeth, which is this huge forest and valley outside of Baldur's Gate. They're in between Elturel and Baldur's Gate because Baldur's Gate, the Flaming Fist, are attempting to set up a new trade route to Elturel because the first one is too dangerous. That's my own thing. So they're out there, and then they get attacked by an armada of gnolls. And they have this giant gnoll force with these 3 leaders and this giant freaking Prokektoek, which is a, mud skipper that carries gnolls around in Avernus that they made for Descent into Avernus, but I made a giant one, a huge one. I called it a Krotoek, and it was basically just gonna be making its way to Baldur's Gate and unleash an army of gnolls. And that's what they spent the first 15 games doing, defeating these villains, saving the villages in Elturgard, defeating gnolls, all with the help of their squad, which included these other NPC soldiers that I had with them, Fletch, a half-elf bard, Kirk, a dragonborn fighter, Ollie, a human fighter who's more ranged, Racket, who's a halfling artificer, and their commander squad captain Arlen Murgrass, who's a paladin, Oath of the Watchers. He doesn't really like this whole invasion thing that's going on. So anyways, they spend those 15 games, they defeat all those guys, they bond with their fellow soldiers. They actually end up redeeming one of the villains. One of the servants of Yanagu wasn't a full gnoll yet. He was halfway into his servitude, and he was the leader, and they ended up sparing him because it had this really cool parallel to Spencer's character Caius, because Caius is also a warlock who is affected by both Yanagu and Levistus. And it was sort of like a Frodo Gollum situation where he was I have to make sure that he can be redeemed, because if he can't, then I can't. And that was beautiful. I didn't have that planned. And so, like, once again, blown away by my players. They're amazing. Also, a cool part about Act 1 was that the players also got to see Elturel descend. See, I didn't start the game with Elturel having descended. Instead, in the first game, they were kind of the reason Thavius Krieg gets to Baldur's Gate, because they're, like, watching the road and they watch it happen. And then they witness Elturel descend. And Pepper's character, Cadman, is actually from Elturel, so there's a whole thing. I'm not going to go over every detail. You should watch it. So anyway, we get to Act 2. Now that we're in Act 2, this is the political intrigue act. We're in Baldur's Gate. There's mysteries. There's murder. There's a death cult. There's people trying to take over the city. Older Ravengard was on his way out in Session 0. He was in Elturel. They watched that descend. And now, Thalamra Vanthamper, one of the members of the Council of Four who rule over the city, has taken out the other 3 members of the Council of Four and is on her way to ruling the city. And she's using the Cult of the Dead 3 in order to eliminate the Flaming Fist and scatter them. So with refugees from Elturel at the door, Hell Riders from that city trying to find the culprit in Baldur's Gate because they think it was their fault because Older Ravengard showed up to Elturel and then it descended, which was actually Thalamra Vanthamper and Thavius Krieg's plan. And she's now paying the Cult of the Dead 3 to just do terrorism, and the Flaming Fist cannot handle all of that at once. Thalamra will clean it all up, and she'll become the leader of Baldur's Gate. And I have to hand it to the pre-written, as much shit as I've talked about that first Baldur's Gate section of Descent into Avernus, all of that is actually kind of just from the book. I didn't come up with that, which I have to commend it for. That's a really cool story. On the other hand, it's not very motivating if you're forcibly drafted into the Flaming Fist. Who cares? That's why I wanted to spend 15 games bonding to their fellow Flaming Fist members, and then coming back to the city and seeing how corrupt it is, and trying their best to do right by the city and their home. Kind of like a little, like somebody else, like a little bit like somebody else, baby. And then I take that idea from the comic book, and I'm like, you know what, Haruman's here now, and he's enacting Zariel's vengeance within the city. Fiend flying through the air, completely armored, hooded, winged, taking out Zariel's enemies. Because turns out Zariel also wants Baldur's Gate. It's a little thing that's kind of in the pre-written, like, hey, that could happen. But I was like, this is my intention now. This is what the whole point of Act 2 is. That's kind of the end goal here, is Thalamra wants to take Baldur's Gate and then become its hellish ruler through Zariel. She has made a deal with her in order to secure this. Why does Zariel want Baldur's Gate? Spoilers, we'll talk about it later. So anyways, the point of this video, what are we talking about? It sounds like you're just kind of talking about your campaign that you wrote, Jacob. Yeah, but I did something I have never done before in this campaign. I lied to my players for like a year and a few months, setting up a reveal that I have never done in a game before, and I basically want to talk about how it went. We get to the end of Act 2. Spoilers if you have not caught up with Descend yet. If you're one of the people who are watching the campaign and you're enjoying it, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. And if you don't want to be spoiled, just leave the video and come back to this and tell me if it was worth it. But we get to the end of Act 2. They've defeated the cult. They've finally gotten Thalamra Vanthamper and all of her sons, and we do a Phoenix Wright episode where there's a trial and everything. But at the end of the trial, no matter what happens, regardless if Thalamra is found guilty or innocent, Zariel invades Baldur's Gate to drag it down to Avernus. Now you might say, hey Jacob, that kind of sucks because like the whole reason the characters did anything didn't really matter. And like, yeah, but the story has to go in a direction. We know we're gonna go to Avernus. That's kind of the whole point. Thalamra was still found guilty. If she would have been found innocent, Zariel would have been like, cool, that's the end. That's our bargain. I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna take the city. And Thalamra probably would have lived. But instead, she's found guilty, and Zariel shows up anyways and kills her. And here's the thing. There was a little encounter a couple of games before this, around the beginning of Act 2. They fought Haruman in the streets of Baldur's Gate. And Spencer just pulled the rug out from under me, and she casted command and chose the words confess. Let me tell you, when you've been working on a game this long, and you've been DMing, and you've been trying to craft this feeling that you want to evoke for your players, and your wife sits across from the table and goes, confess? I've never felt that kind of fear in my life. It was horrifying. Spencer, what? Spencer is built different. And Haruman did confess. He confessed the fact that he didn't want Zariel to take Baldur's Gate because Elturel was his home. And Zariel took Elturel out of vengeance, but Haruman was willing to follow her into the Nine Hells and to do everything that she did, but his faith began to shake when she took the home of innocent people who never even wanted to fight this war to begin with. So Haruman is trying his best to make sure Baldur's Gate doesn't also follow the same fate, and to also get Zariel to see what she's doing is wrong, while also still following her, because if he fails, then she's gonna kill him, right? Zariel really hates people that betray her. So the trial happens, Thalamra's found guilty, and then I play out this scene. Arlen, their commander, who they've been with for the past 30 games, who they haven't had the greatest relationship with because they don't really know who he's siding with, because he's a flaming fist, and also has made decisions in the past to allow soldiers to die for the greater good. My players always had a little bit of an ick with him, but in this moment, they find out, as Arlen tells Caius that he needs to come with him, that he doesn't want anybody else to die, that he's trying to save the most people possible. But unfortunately, because how things have gone, you're the one who has to make this sacrifice. I wish I could. I can't. I already have. And he says, there was a time where you wanted me to confess, Caius, and now I am. I should honor your request, Caius. To confess. Uh-oh. Boom, got him. Arlen was Haruman the whole time. And then Zariel shows up and they have to fight Arlen because they don't want to give Caius back. And Haruman and Alanthea show up, and Zariel and also Yanagu shows up, and there's a whole invasion of Baldur's Gate, and they are able to fight most of it back, close the portal, and go to Avernus. Huge freaking combat. It was insane. But that was it. That was my big plot twist. There were so many points in time in the game where they were trying to figure out what Arlen's motives were, and I had to lie to them in and out of game about who he was to preserve this one scene that might not even happen. Because, again, I don't script the whole game. I'm just it would be cool if this happened. That would be awesome. And it kind of led to that entire moment. And let me tell you guys, it was agonizing. I don't know if I will ever do that again. I then did a whole scene right after that where I went through every interaction that they had with him that had a double meaning that he was actually Haruman, to prove that this had been true the whole time. I didn't last week decide, that'd be a cool twist, I'm gonna do that. I had tried really hard to lay seeds early, which is why they probably didn't trust him very well. They could tell. They're smart. And the reason I say it was agonizing was it sucked to not tell them. It sucked to lie to my players for the gratification of a plot twist later on. And I think that's a really hard thing to do in D&D, because you can't let anything slip. And then also, everybody could react really negatively to it. I was so worried that they were going to think that made no sense, and that it was a huge betrayal, and they were going to be damn, I don't like this, Jacob. This is just really lame. It feels like you've just kind of pulled the rug out from under us in a bad way, not in a good way like Spencer did. That was cool. Or they were just cool, who cares? They just would have no reaction. And luckily, I think they liked it. I think it's hard to say, because it's this sucks, but also nice job, Jacob, which is cool. I love those guys. Thank you guys. Love you. So anyways, this long-winded rant video about a campaign that I put a lot of work into, that I care very much about, is about what, Jacob? What are you yapping for, man? Well, other than this just being a campaign diaries kind of thing, which I don't normally do, I wanted everybody to know that I did this. I held on to a secret about a pretty vital character in this campaign for a long time, and lied to my players, not only in-game, but out of game. Spencer would talk to me, and I would have to, about the game, and I would have to, redirect her because she's smarter than me, and just lie. And holding on to that for the sake of a plot twist, I don't know if it's worth it. If you're willing to do that... If you're willing to put yourself through this cool, I'm just gonna hold on to this and never talk about it until the moment arises when it's supposed to happen, but lay the seeds and make it not super obvious, I think you can do it. I think it's a cool thing to try to do to your players. It was definitely very surprising. It was a cool moment. At least I hope it was a cool moment. Everybody said it was a cool moment. And it's really set up this next act of our game to be something really special. And that wouldn't be possible without my players being so open to let me cook. So yeah, I guess I just want to say thank you to Mia, Spencer, Pepper, and Colton, who let me do this and have been really cool about bringing their own takes to the story, being respectful to what I want to tell, and doing some really cool stuff in this game I really wanted to run for a long time. I hope you got some enjoyment out of this. Let me know if you want to see another video like this where I talk about things I've done in D&D games before. I have no idea if this was helpful for anyone, but you know what? I'm starting to learn that maybe my videos don't always have to be helpful. There's got to be something that I want to talk about. Okay, bye.